generally I start with a blank, the paper, right? So you can take the heading. Session number 1 is about the data measurement and visualization, right? Data measurement and visualization. Okay, one more thing, my friends. Now, today being the first lecture, I may not go till up until probably 11 a.m., right? I might finish it a little early as well, right? So because on the first day, I don't want to overload you with a lot of other different concepts and the statistical matters, right? So I might be finishing around 10:30 around, right? So just to ensure that I won't overdo on the first session, right? But yes, right, good. Right, fantastic. So take the heading, my first data measurements and the visualization, right? Good, great. Right. Great. So I'm sure, since we have quite a few people who have done the statistics prior and then who are actually, even though, I mean, this is something that you might have even learned in your school time as well, not some advanced thing that I'm going to cover today, right? Some basic matters that I'm going to touch upon in today's session, right? So, friends, now, we'll start with the first heading under the data measurement and visualization. That's going to be what we call as introduction to statistics. Introduction to statistics. So, okay, right? So take the heading, my friends, introduction to statistics, right? Introduction to statistics. As I mentioned, I want everyone to take notes, right? Probably I may not share the particular lecture materials on time just to ensure that you get the notes, right? I might share the lecture materials a little later, right? Maybe close to the examination, right? This lecture notes that I'm going to cover, right? But I'll be sharing the videos, but lecture notes that I'm going to cover, I'll be generally posting that a little later because I'm encouraging everyone to take notes. My basic purpose is to ensure that when you take the notes, as I mentioned, when your hand works, your brain works, right? That's the basic idea, right? Good. Right. Now, friends, okay, now let's start with the very basic fundamental things, right? As we discussed, there are quite many of you who may not be very much familiar with the statistics, right? So, we'll start with this, right? Can you, I mean, you might have done this earlier, but if not, right, that's again fine, right? Can you tell me what is the purpose of analyzing the data? Why do you need to analyze the data, my friend? What is the purpose? What is the purpose? Anyone? Fantastic. Thank you so much, my friend. 086, yes. And my friend 039, brilliant, brilliant. Thinking, very good. Right. And my friend 028, fantastic, yes. Very good. Right. Oh, very good, right? Okay, so let me read out some of the things that my friends mentioned, right? So my friend 086, sorry, I don't have your name here. It says, take good decisions. My friend 039 says to make decisions. My friend 028, yeah, says to make decisions. My friend 046, right? Shankar says, get what insight in that data and get the patterns. Of course, maybe pattern recognition, right? And my friend 092 also says making decisions. My friend 057 also says to make decisions, to make better decisions. 004. Pabasar is saying problem solve. 090 is saying get clear information to make decisions. Hasita is saying forecasting. Very good, right? And then my friend 098 says to get summary of the data set. My friend 092 says to make strategic plans. Very good, right? And my friend 022 says to get meaningful information, solve problems, and make decisions. Okay, very good, right? So my friend 079 says to make better decisions, identify hidden patterns, right? Medmal, right? Very good, right? Of course, I think that's fantastic answer that you have given, right? 100% agreed with everything that you mentioned, right? The statistical analysis or the data analysis have lots and lot of different reasons as to why we use them. right? So but friends, just to summarize this fact into a maybe one important thing, we can say then, right? The data primarily we analyze the data. Part of the reason for us to analyze the data is based upon what we have mentioned, right? So some of you mentioned that I'm just trying to see what you have mentioned here, right? Some of you said that, okay, identifying the hidden pattern, identifying the patterns of data, identify the sorry identify the patterns of data. Patterns of data. I'm just taking things that you mentioned, right? Very good, right? And at the same time, to get meaningful information, solve problems, and make decisions, right? Good. So let's say that, yeah. So let's say I identify the patterns of data, right? At the same time, once you, I mean, data, I'm sorry, data, right? At the same time, my friends, another reason is that, using the data, we can use the data for comparison, right? We can use the analysis for comparison, right? For comparison, right? At the same time, we can use this the analysis for ranking, right? We'll talk about this ranking in detail little later. Comes for comparison. What I'm writing here, right? Okay. For comparison, ranking, right? ranking, right? Ranking to rank the particular, the outcome, right? At the same time, we can also use some of you mentioned this very clearly, which is really good, right? For forecasting, right? Forecasting. And then we also use this for, let's say, for decision making as well. At the end, with all that, my friends, as you very clearly mentioned, right, the data, the statistical analysis will be used by maybe identifying the patterns, by comparing certain things, by ranking the data, by forecasting the particular, the patterns, right? We'll be able to make decisions, to make better decisions. So we'll say to make decisions, right? Yeah, exactly, right. So this is basically what we can use the analysis for, right? We analyze the data for so many reasons, but as you very clearly mentioned, as many of you very clearly mentioned, we use the data to make better decisions, right? To make the decisions, right? Then the analysis can be used to make better decisions at the end of the day using the data. We need the data to do that. So what we do, my friends, we take the data and we analyze the data using some statistical techniques, right? And once you analyze the data using some statistical techniques, what happens here, my friends, we are ending up with some specific information that can be used to make better decisions, right? This information can be used to identify the patterns, to compare certain the aspects of two or maybe multiple elements that you are going to compare with, right? Or maybe to rank some of the things that you want to rank with the data, or maybe to do forecasting, understanding maybe based upon there are different ways of forecasting as well, right? So you can forecast certain things as well, right? And finally to make decisions, right? So with that, my friends, what we can say is the now with that particular understanding about as to why as to the purpose of analyzing the data, we can say, right? We can say, right? We can say, right? There was what I'm statistics, right? We can say that, right? The 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 data will be used to, right? The data will be the input for our the analysis, and we'll be using some statistical techniques to convert that into information, right? So the input will be the data. Using statistics, we'll be getting the output as the information, right? Good, great, right? So friends, take this down, and we are going to discuss some of the basic concepts in statistics in detail going forward, right? Very good. Okay, friends, so are we all good? Have you taken this down? Yes, just give me some thumbs up if you have taken this down, my friends. Yes. As I mentioned, my friends, I'll be only doing some very basic things today, right? Good. Yes, all good. All good. Brilliant, fantastic, very good. Some of you have taken this down, right? Very good, my friends. Great, good. Good, right. So, my friends who may have some statistical background, I think there were around 25 people, right? Probably you need to bear with me a little bit today because I'll be touching upon some very basic things, right? But I'm sure you don't mind, right? Good, because I just want to, reach everyone, each and every one of you. There are quite a many of you who may not have that initial statistical background, just trying to lay the foundation here, right? Thank you again, everyone. Fantastic, and thank you for the thumbs up, right? Right. So brilliant. Very good. So many of you have taken this down, right? Good. Right. Now, friends, now if you look into some of these textbooks, right? As to what the you know the statistics is all about, right? So we had the heading, what is statistics, what do you mean by statistics, right? And we very briefly mentioned statistics is basically you take the data as input and using the statistical technique you get the information as the output, right? So friends, now if you look into as to what the statistics is all about, if you are trying to find a definition for that, yes, when you look for some statistical books, you would find some fantastic definitions that neither sometimes no you either me may understand, right? So for me, because of that, I can't simplify to a great extent, but I tried my best to simplify this term, the statistics, right, as to what the statistics is all about, right? So basically, my friends, if you talk about as to what the statistics is all about, right, it's basically kind of for statistical analysis we need the data for sure. As we mentioned, that's going to be the input for our statistical analysis, right? So in statistics, we collect that data, right? We classify this data, right? We summarize this data and we also organize this data and then we also analyze this data, right? By doing so, my friends, we interpret, right? Interpret the numerical information, right? Now, this is what is important, my friend, right? Now, I know that today we have a lot of LLMs, right? Large language models, let's say as an example, the ChatGPT or whatever, right? That you can maybe Copilot or Gemini or DeepSeek or whatever you name it, right? I mean, the statistical analysis is not something that you need to really worry too much about, right? But at the same time, my friends, what really matters is how do you interpret, right, this numerical information that you're going to obtain from this particular data analysis, right? That you're going to, the data that you're going to analyze with the statistical tools, right? So in our discussions, my friends, I'm actually trying to pay a lot of attention for this interpretation as well, right? Because we have seen in our previous experience with the students as well as the industry engagement, right? The statistical analysis, of course, if you know the tool, if you give the input, yes, you get the output, right? But then how do you interpret that particular information, right? By merely handing over that interpretation to a AI tool may not really helpful because for so many reasons, right? And what we really expect, when you come out from this program with the MDA, Master of Data Analysis, right? What the industry is expecting from you is that, yeah, once you know the tools, you know the analysis and all that, but not only that, you know how to interpret what you are going to get as well, right? There'll be some contextual elements as well. Now, since I've been doing some work with the financial analytics and all that, I mean, I know that the financial knowledge is required here, right? But going beyond that, my friends, that particular how you actually read the numbers, how you bring that number to the context and how you explain and how you relate that to a particular the context that you want to refer to, that's really important, my friend, right? So statistics not only about collecting, classifying, summarizing, organizing, or analyzing the data, but rather going beyond that, my friends, it's also comprised with the interpreting or interpretation of this numerical information, right? So that it'll help the whoever the party, whoever the individuals to make better decisions at the end of the day, right? So with that line, my friends, let me write a brief definition about the statistics, right? So you can take this down and you can also think about it. There are other definitions as I mentioned, but I mean, you can consider them as well, right? But we're not going to go for a more very comprehensive, very detailed, very technical definition for this statistic, but we are rather trying to come up with some basic fundamental and but still very important definition for this the term statistics, right? So we can write here, my friend, right? Okay, we can write here. Let me write here. Okay, you can write here, right? Statistics. Sorry, maybe I'll just statistics, right? Is the science of data which involves collecting, comma, classifying, comma, summarizing, comma, organizing, analyzing. Yeah, I know that's not right. Analyzing, right? Okay. And interpreting numerical information. And interpreting, sorry. And interpreting numerical information to assist in making effective decisions. Right. Right. So take this down, my friends. A very basic definition, right? But just take this down. Statistics is the science of data which involves collecting, classifying, summarizing, organizing, analyzing, and interpreting numerical information to assist in making effective decisions. Right. Good. Right. So, friends, are we all good? Can we proceed? Yes. I hope that you have taken this down. Right. Yes. Are we all good? Yes. Thank you so much, my friends. Thank you for the thumbs up. Others, take your time, not in a hurry. Take your time, not in a hurry, right? Very good. Thank you so much for the thumbs up. Very good. So, which means that we are on the same page, right? Very good. Brilliant. Take your time, my friends, not in a hurry, not in a hurry, right? Good. Right? Fantastic. Very good. Right. Great. Thank you. Very good, my friends. Like, thanks for the thumbs up, right? Others, take your time. Let me wait for a couple of seconds till you take this down, right? Not in a hurry, right? Very good. Thanks again, everyone. Thank you so much for thumbs up again, right? Very good. Brilliant, right? Good, great. Okay, good. Yes, my friends, my friend Malind is asking, can we analyze information other than the numerical, right? Basically, yes, of course, now when you come to the data, some of the data could be, you will, when it comes to our research as an example, right? So my friend Malind is asking a very good question, right? Malind's question is this, right? Thanks again, everyone, for the thumbs up. Appreciate that a lot, right? Good. But I'll refer to my friend's Maninda's question. It's a very important question that my friend Maninda asking, right? Malin is asking, can we analyze information other than numerical? Right? Can we analyze information other than numerical? Right? So we can say, right, okay. Can we analyze the information? Can we, other than using numerical things? Okay. Now, um, okay, now as an example, something like this. Now, when it comes to our research work, right? In our research work, we have some ways of collecting the data. I'll talk about this data later on, right? In detail, but some data that we collect is more numerical. As an example, let's say that we kind of really uh, you know uh, do a survey, and we get the respondents to respond to the survey instrument, right? And using the survey respondents or the respondent scale, that they're going to give for a particular indicator or for a particular question in the survey instrument, we get the information, and that information we generally analyze using numerical statistical tools like could be SPSS, could be partial square structural equation modeling, could be regression analysis, etc., etc. We can use different tools to different ways of analyzing the data. They are purely numerical, right? Sometimes there are other ways of collecting the data. As an example, I'm just refer to again research domain. Sometimes you conduct more, let's say, interviews. You talk to people and you record the whatever the discussion that you're going to have with the other party, and that information is more or less not in a numerical nature. Like what you get is a chunk of the text. Probably like you get a recording, and then what you do is like basically we transcribe that into words. Earlier we used to do it manually, but rather right now we have it, at least now, some tools where we can use to convert that the interview discussions into a, or the panel discussions into a the transcribed into a word format, right? So that text format, let's say, right, that text format, and that text format is like then we take that piece of information to again analyze. Now you can see that this is going to be, I mean, when you have chunk of information, right, that information is more like right, right, that information is more like more like let's say qualitative information. I'll talk about that term a little later, right? Like so that there'll be some information that is being collected as interview data. Then again, we need to, based upon that data, which is, let's say, some discussion, some recording, some insights that is being shared with the researchers. We have that with us, and we want to analyze that particular piece of information and make some better conclusions or decisions based upon that, right? So, friends, what happens is then, again, for us to analyze that kind of, let's say, some data that was not collected in a quantitative nature, not in the numerical nature, as in interview data, interview transcribed information that you have with you, right? When you want to analyze them, we call them like identifying the keywords, tagging them, identifying into themes, dividing into themes, and again making informed and for decisions based upon that data. Then again we'll be using some numerical statistical analytical techniques. As an example, we sometimes we observe how many times a particular person mentioned on a particular keyword, right? And based upon that keyword, we identify some thematic areas that we can take the particular information, right? So at the end of the day, right, these informations which we can get in many different forms apart from the numerical fashion, or maybe there are other modes as well. You might have to have a number at the end of the day to make a decision based upon that piece of information, right? So my friend's question: can we analyze information other than the numerical? We will be having data other than numerical, but to analyze them, we need to assign some numbers, like as how many times it's been mentioned, like how long a particular statement was made, as an example, right? Likewise, when you're actually grouping them into different themes, and when you're actually analyzing the data, that numerical value has to become there, right? So just to answer your question, most of the time, let's say 90% of the time, right, when we analyze the information, we will be bringing some numerical figure into that to attach to that, right? I don't know whether I answered your question, Malinda, but is it too long or is it all good? All good? Thank you so much. Brilliant, right? Fantastic question indeed, right? Very good. Right. Right. Okay. Fantastic, right? Great. Good questions, right? Good. Right. Now, friends, what we are going to do right now, right? We are going to now talk about, right, the data. Now, before we step into this statistical side, right, we are going to understand this data a little further, right? We are going to understand this data a little further, little, more in detail, right? So what are we going to do, my friends, to examine this data in detail? We are going to divide this data into different, the categories, right? Different categories based upon the nature of the data. This data can be divided into different categories, right? So we are going to decide how we are going to discuss how we can divide this data into different categories. There are different ways of dividing the data and classifying the data, and then we'll also discuss about the statistics little later. We'll be stepping into statistics little later on, after that, right? So we can take the next heading, my friends. The next heading will be what we call as sources of data. Sources of data, right? Source of data. Now, I believe that you have a bit of understanding about as to what the statistics is all about, right? Are we all good, my friends? Are we all good? Yes? Fantastic. Thank you so much, my friends. Very good. Brilliant. Very good, right? Yes, right. Fantastic. Very good, right? So I'm actually touching upon very basic areas right now, not to go into the details today, right? But just to ensure that we are on the same page, week by week, we will lay the foundation, we'll take into the bit of advanced level in statistics once we reach to the final stage of our program in the statistics for data science, right? Very good, my friends. Thank you so much for the messages. Thank you so much for your thumbs up. Really appreciate that. Right? Good. Right. So, friends, thank you so much, everyone. Again, brilliant, right? Appreciate that a lot, right? Very good. Now, friends, now let's take the next heading, right? As I mentioned, now we are going to discuss about the data a little bit further, right? Better we understand a bit about the data, and as I mentioned, this data, my friends, based upon the sources of the data, we can divide the data into different categories, right? We can divide the data into different categories. Based upon the nature of the data, we can again divide the data into different categories as well, right? So, friends, first and foremost, we are going to see, right, how we can divide the data, how we can classify the data based upon the source of the data, right? So we can write here, my friend, right? Okay, we can write here source of data. Source of data. So data. Source of data, right? Source of data. We can say, right? Based on the source of data, we can generally classify it into two categories. Right. We'll see what are they, my friend. I'm sure that you might sometimes have heard about this, right? So, right. Right. Categories, right? Good. Right. So this categorization, my friends, we call them as primary data and the secondary data. I'm sure some of you may have heard about it, right? Are there anyone who have heard about this primary data and secondary data? Yes? Any thumbs up, right? Very good. So my friends have heard about it, right? Very good, right? Fantastic. Okay, Gayatri has heard about it, right? Okay. Manya has heard about it, right? Very good, right? And who else? Pramodi has heard about it, right? Very good. Right? And yes, my friend 088 has heard about it, right? Very good, brilliant, fantastic, right? 016, right? Yes, very good, fantastic, right? Brilliant, right? And my friend 023, yes, you have heard about it, right? Very good, right? So some of you have heard about this primary data and secondary data, my friend, right? Others may have not, others may have. Don't worry about that, right? So let's see what do you mean by this primary data and secondary data, right? So what I'm trying to say here, as I mentioned, the data can be divided into two categories. So we can say, right, the data can be divided into primary data and secondary data. The one is particular as a secondary data, right? right? Data can be divided into primary data and secondary data, right? So as you mentioned, some of you may have heard about it, right? Some of you may not have heard about it, but let's understand. If it is not, that's all good, right? Let's try to understand what do you mean by this primary data and what do you mean by this secondary data, my friend, right? So both types of data is very important, my friend, right? When it comes to our statistical analysis, right? Let's try to understand them with some examples as well, right? Okay. So friends, you can have this, the note here. You can say data divided into primary data and the secondary data. Primary data and the secondary data, right? Right. So friends, of course, I'm sure that some of you mentioned that you know about this primary data versus secondary data, right? But let's try to get an understanding about this primary data versus secondary data, right? Now, primary data, my friends, primary, as an example, the primary data is basically collected, right? First hand by a particular individual or by a researcher, right? Directly from the source for a particular purpose, right? Now, I mean, as researchers, my friends, we sometimes tend to collect a lot of this, in many instances, we'll be collecting this primary data, right? And in the corporate sector as well, you will also collect this. You may, I'm sure that you are collecting this primary data in many instances as well, right? Now, as an example, if you look into the people who are working in the marketing sector as an example, right? You will be probably reaching the customers, and then you'll be collecting the data from the customers about their, let's say, customer satisfaction, right? So there are some customer satisfaction surveys some organizations do, and they still do, right? Where they to get for them to get an idea about how satisfied the customers are, concerning some of the the services, the product that you have given to the customers or delivered to the customers, right? And at the same time, if you look into the let's say the HR people, right? Now you also most of the time engage in collecting this primary data, where you kind of really let's say as an example, you get the CVs of the employees, and then you interview them, potential employees, let's say, right? And you interview them. This interview, the data that you collect at the interview point is basically, my friends, primary data, right? Why do you say primary data? As we mentioned, right? These are the data collected firsthand, right? By a particular individual or researcher, right? Directly from the source, right? Primary data, right? At the same time, my friends, sometimes, now if you look into some of the scientists, right? These scientists, they do some laboratory testing, they do the experiments, right? And maybe as an example, let's say, they're doing some experiments concerning the effectiveness of a particular drug for a particular disease, right? So in that particular, the experiments that they conduct, they maybe have some control environment, and they maybe have two or multiple groups in the a particular, the experiment setting, and you give a particular medicine to one party, and the other party may not be given that medicine, whatever, right? And then accordingly, you collect the data, right, about the improvements or the health conditions or whatever, right? So companies like the Pfizer and all that. I mean, they actually do a lot of these experiments for many different drugs, the manufacturing and all that. You can see that these are again primary data. You are collecting the data first hand, right? Directly from the source to obtain a particular purpose, right? So there are many other things one of the other important thing, so we mentioned about the surveys, we mentioned about the interviews, we mentioned about the experiments, right? But same time, my friends, observations, right? Now, I could remember, some time ago, we did a particular study for a particular company about this, cleaner production. We were trying to understand their wastage, wastage, in a particular production process, right? So, in there, my friends, one of the way that we collect the data is based upon the observation, right? Observation, right? So we were looking at the time that the employees may be taking from take to move from one location to the another, right? we were looking at the rejections that are going from the production line, how many rejections are going out from the production process, right? Observation. By observing the things, we actually collect the data, right? We took the notes like, okay, the persons to travel from this location to this location at his the factory floor, they take this much of time on average, right? And in the production line, if you observe for 1 hour, with that 1 hour out of 100 units or whatever the number of units, this number of units were the good products, and this number of units were the the rejected products, whatever, right? And likewise, so the observations, right? And we see a lot of natural scientists do a lot of observations, like where they maybe observe the animals' behaviors, right, in the natural habitat, right, and then observe their the sleeping patterns, like their breeding patterns, like their eating patterns, etc., etc., right? So those are what you call as a primary data, right? So we'll step into secondary later, right? So let's say let's have a brief explanation about this primary data first and foremost, then we go for the secondary data subsequently, right? Great. So friends, we can say, right, okay, under the primary data, right, under the primary data, we can say here, right, okay, source, right? Good. Source, right? So we can write here primary data refers to data collected firsthand, right, by an individual who could be individuals as well, right, directly from the source to obtain a specific purpose, right? Individual, right, for a specific purpose, right? Primary data refers to the data collected firsthand by an individual, direct from the source to obtain a specific purpose. So you basically, collect this data with a specific purpose in mind, in your mind, my friend, right? So as you mentioned, like it could be the, to understand the customer satisfactions, to understand the the to get more information about the potential employees and their suitability for a particular job role, right? And to maybe to test a particular drug or whatever, right? And maybe to observe the, let's say, the efficiency and the wastage, or maybe the natural habitat of a particular animal or whatever, right? Those things are the primary purpose that you're going to that you might have to have when you're actually collecting the data in the first hand as of the primary data, right? Very good, right? Take this down, my friends. Take this down. I want to go in a pace that that is good enough for you to take the notes, right? Very good. Right. So, friends, like we can also uh, add a little bit more into this. We can write here, right? The collection method. So the source will be the from the first hand by the source itself, right? First hand by the source itself, right? First hand by the particular source itself, right? Okay, right. And with that piece of information, my friends, let's go to this collection method, right? So the collection method, right? So to collect this primary data, my friends, as we mentioned, right? As we mentioned, like maybe we'll be using a service, right? We'll be using a service, right? Okay, just give me a second. We'll be using service. We'll be using interviews. and we'll be using experiments. We'll be using observations, or we'll be using some field studies, etc. Right, good. Right. So friends, are we all good? Are we all good with this? Yes, makes sense. Primary data, yes. Thank you so much, my friends. Very good, brilliant, right? Fantastic, right? Malinda, all good. My friend 090, all good, right? My friend Gayatri is all good, and my friend Pamudit is all good. Pabasari is all good, right? Pramudit all good, right? Fantastic, right? And my friend Tushar is all good, right? Brilliant. 091, you're all good, fantastic. 057, all good. Brilliant, fantastic, very good, my friends, right? Good, great, right? So these are some fundamental things, my friends, but I hope that you get this at the very beginning, right? Thank you so much, my friends, for the thumbs up. 055, all good. Brilliant, fantastic, very good. Right. Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your messages, right? Thank you, my friends. 046, right? Shankaran, right? Very good. Fantastic, great. Okay, now that's about the primary data, my friend, right? So if you are all clear with the primary data, let's go to the secondary data. Let's go to secondary data, right? Let's see what do we mean by secondary data, right? Okay, good. Now, friends, now as we mentioned, the primary data we discussed, we collect them first hand, right? From the particular source for a particular purpose, right? But my friends, sometimes we might find certain data, right, that has been already been collected, right, by someone else, right, for a different purpose. Maybe not for the same purpose that we want to do, maybe for the same purpose, but most probably for a different purpose, right? Now, this information that is been already collected, now this, when you actually collecting the primary data, my friends, you have to put some effort, and there should be some specific purpose, right? So that will take some time to collect the data, but you will get the most relevant data, of course, right? Having said that, there's actually now in today's context, my friends, there's so many data that's been already available. There has been so many that has been already available, right? Now, as an example, now these data could be in the form of, could be in the government or the state or the non-state publications or the academic publications, right? Or could be the data repositories, right? Or could be the existing, existing data sets that you find in certain, certain organizations, right? So these are some data that is already been collected, secondary, right? So as an example, my friends, if you look into some, the government reports, maybe the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, right? They have a lot of information in their particular, let's say, the database. As an example, the annual reports and maybe about the inflation rates, about the, the consumer price index, right? And, so many information concerning the GDP growth, the GDP levels, the GDP growth rate, sector-wise, the data in different contribution to the national economy, right? Likewise, right? So these are some data that was collected for a different purpose, not for the purpose probably that we really want it to be, but they have collected data. This data, if we can access, my friends, if we have the access, we can use that data for some of the investigation that we do, right? At the same time, my friends, there's some academic publications, right? Could be some research articles published in the academic journals, or maybe IEEE Explorer, right? Or maybe things like, the academic data such as the Scopus Science Direct, Web of Science, JSTOR, right? Likewise, you can find a lot of databases that you can, let's say the research databases that you can find some articles, literature, right? Those are again secondary data. Right? At the same time, I find some company reports. Now, if you are keen on analyzing some financial data, right? And if you are maybe on that particular area, you might see that the company's annual reports, right? That comprise the financial statements, like the primarily the four financial statements: income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement, and the statement of changes in owner's equity. Right, those things actually are presented in the company's annual report. Right, so these annual reports are actually published by the companies so that you can access that piece of information, and that information you can use to whatever the decisions you're going to make. Right, as an example, my friends, like in our not in this class, but in certain sessions that we do for different programs, like financial analytics, right? We use this financial information of these companies that are already been published. Right, as an example, let's say a particular investor wanting to understand, they want to invest upon a particular company. They want to decide which company they should step into. Right, so they are not in a position to do a primary data collection, going to each and every companies and maybe interviewing each and every manager or the top management and understanding as to which company is better suit for their motivation. But rather, my friends, they can refer to the secondary data. Right, they can use the financial reports. They can do some the ratio analysis using the data. Right, profitability ratios, liquidity ratios, right, like solvency ratios, right, efficiency ratios, right. Those things will help them to make a better decisions about the performance and the position of these companies. Right, so do you collect the first hand information? No, you refer to the existing data that was published by the companies in the annual reports. Right, good. Similarly, my friends, like there could be some websites and online data sets, right? As an example, World Bank, right, have some data. United Nations have some data. Kaggle have some data. Google data set search have some data. Statistica have some data, right? So you can use any of these data sets, databases to collect the data, right? And more importantly, my friends, in today's context, the social media, right? Sometimes the social media related data again available in different repositories or different, the data bases which you can refer to, right? How many likes was given for a particular product, right? How many people have viewed a particular product on a particular, post, right? Etc. Etc. Right, so those things are, my friends, are the secondary data that are already available that we can use for further investigations if required to meet our particular purpose. Right, good. Right, so are we clear with the secondary data as well, my friends? Are we all good? We'll take some notes, but are we clear with that? Can you see the difference between the primary data and secondary data here? All good, brilliant. Thank you so much, my friend. 023, fantastic, very good, right? My friend Shankini, thank you so much. Hasit, thank you so much, very good, brilliant, right? Malinda, all good, thank you so much. 088, thank you so much. 055, all good. 039, all good. 024, all good, right? Sorry. I like to see your thumbs up, okay? 055, we mentioned that, okay? 092, 109, right? Good. Right, good. So you got the idea, right? Fantastic. Brilliant, my friend. Very good, right? Brilliant. Very good. So we'll take a short note on that. Yes. So very good. My friend Shankaran is asking question, right? Already existing data is secondary data, is secondary, is it, right? Shankaran, that's a very good question, right? Yes, in a way you are correct, right? Secondary data is basically the data that is already available, right? That has been already collected, right? By someone else, right? For a different purpose. Right, so they are the data that is already available, as you mentioned, Sankaran, right? So they are being collected by someone else for a different purpose, right? But we as researchers, we as data scientists, right? We can, even if we have the access, we can reach that secondary data, right? And we can make some informed decisions, informed insights using that kind of secondary data that we are going to refer to. We're going to refer to, right? Brilliant, very good. Right. Okay. Right. So, friends, we can have a small explanation here, right? So sorry, Shankar, I'm sorry. Did I answer your question? Okay, all good, right? Thank you so much. Very good. That's a brilliant question, Shankar, right? Keep asking good questions, right? Very good. Right. Fantastic. Very good, my friends, right? So we'll take this down. We'll take this down, my friends. We can see, right? Source. We can write a source. We can write here, right? Secondary data. refers to data that has already been collected by someone else for different purpose. That's called basically that's where the source of the different, absolutely different for a different purpose, right? Right. That's the second data, right? So friends, like this collection methods, there are many different collection methods, right? So we can say collection methods. That literature review. Literature review means, my friends, you go for a, let's say as an example, in scientific writing, we go for some scholar databases like Google Scholar, like the ones that I mentioned, right? Like the the Scopus database, right? IEEE Explorer, right? The Science Direct, Web of Science, right? JSTOR, right? So there are some literature that we can refer to from there, right? Or maybe the government reports, right? Literature review, government reports, right? And then let's say company reports. As an example, let's say, this company reports, my friends, if it is a listed company, we know that these companies' annual reports are listed in the, let's say, as an example, let's say the Colombo Stock Exchange, CSE, right? .lk have listed companies annual reports, right? As an example, I'm just saying, right? Okay. At the same time, like, this the government reports, something like, the central bank reports, right? That we are referring to companies, right? Right. And then we also have, the websites and the data online databases, right? Example, we can say things like, the World Bank data, and we have the UN data, right? And we also have the Kaggle, right? And we have uh, statistic, Statistica, right? Etc. You can keep on, adding more if required, right? Okay. Okay. Right. Fantastic. Take this down. Take this down. Right. Okay. Good. Great. Right.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Yes.
I just want to ask a question. Can
Hmm.
we just, let's say, if we go to the one of the companies and website,
Mm-hmm.
just
Uh-huh.
we get the financial statement from that.
Right.
So that is collected from the first, and we can collect that it at once easily, no? So that
Yes.
can't be categorized as that as a primary data.
Right. Right. So what you're asking is like, as an example, that you go for a particular company as an example, right? And then you, let's say, collect that specific information at that point, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Now that's a good question, right? Now, as an example, now let's say that you're doing a particular study, right? And then you want to understand a particular company's, let's say, the financial performance, etc. So that you visit the particular company, and once you visit the particular company, what you do is like you get other information. Along with that, you get the financial data as well, right? So yes, if you collect the data from the source, right, at that point that's going to be primary data, right? Let's say that you have a questionnaire, right? You have a questionnaire in your hand, and in that questionnaire you may have other certain information like what is your revenue for the last financial year, right? How much of sales, how much of sales that you have made over the last the year in terms of quantities, right? And how much of let's say the bank loan that you need to pay for a particular bank or the banks, right? So you get that information firsthand when you visit a particular company for certain data collection, right? So if that's the case, as you very clearly mentioned, right, that kind of information will be falling into the primary data, because you are collecting the data firsthand by going to the particular, let's say, company and obtaining that data for a particular purpose, right? So as you very clearly mentioned, if that's the case, that will be falling into the primary data. That will be falling into the primary data, right? But if you're just going for the Colombo Stock Exchange website and downloading the particular company reports, and then you are using that information, right, for a particular study, that will be secondary data, right? So since you asked this question, it's a very important question that you have asked, right? Let me also tell you one very important thing, right? When we do some studies, my friends, we will, there's no mandate for us to only stick to one particular data source, right? We can collect the data from primary data sources as well as from secondary data sources, right? So as an example, if you are studying a particular company's particular, let's say in your research in a future date, right, that not in your MDA program, but if you are going for the MSc later on, right, with the approval, we are still waiting, right? Let's say that if you're doing research, right, or maybe later on studies, you want to do a PhD. In your PhD work, you are actually wanting to get some information about the company's performances, right? So one way you might visit the company and you might get some information in your survey instrument with some information regarding their performance, etc., etc. On the other side, you might also go to the particular company's website or maybe whatever stock exchange data set, data repositories, and then you collect the data regarding the annual reports as well, right? So you can use both primary data and secondary data for your analysis. There's no restriction saying that you can only use primary data, not the secondary data. Oh, you are using secondary data, you can't use primary data. No, there's no restrictions likewise, right? So more information, more insight, more better decisions, right? So to answer your question, the scenario that you mentioned, yes, it's going to be primary data. That's a brilliant question. Are we all good?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, right? Very good. Exactly, right? So my friend Malin is asking a good question again, right? When the inland revenue collecting company financial data, it is primary data. Am I correct? Yes, you're 100% correct, right? The inland revenue do not go to the company's website and maybe CSE and look for the past information, right? They will ask the particular company to self-report the particular, the financial data, right? So that's going to be primary data. They are collecting that information for tax purposes, right? They have a specific purpose, and the particular company will report that particular financial figures in terms of their profit margins or whatever, right? For specific information, and the Inland Revenue is actually taking that data as, they're actually reaching that company, and the company rather reach the Inland Revenue, and they will be giving that piece of information as information, and that will be received from the Inland Revenue as the primary data. 100% correct, Malin. That's a good question, right? Very good. Friends, are we all good? Are we all good? Brilliant, fantastic, very good, right? Good. You guys are doing so good, right? Up until now. Fantastic, right? Thank you, Dilimini, right? Very good. Right. So, friends, I think we have discussed almost 1.5 hours time, right? So let us take a small break and come back, right? It's 9:30. We'll take around, let's say, 9:31, but it's okay, let's say 9:30, right? Let's come back around 9:45, right? We will discuss again some of the other important aspect about this data going forward, right? Are we all good, my friends? Shall we come back at 9:45 a.m.? Brilliant, right? Very good. Right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a small break and come back at 9:45 a.m. Right. Thank you so much. Good.